Hello and welcome to this Mobile World Live webinar on what you need to know to leverage cellular in enterprise networking. I'm Chris Donkin, Content Editor at Mobile World Live, and I'll be moderating the session. Now, enterprises have long relied on private networks for secure, high-performing and highly available access to applications residing within private data centers. However, demands for corporate networking solutions have changed due to the rising use of video, guest networks, IoT data, and the need to set up and tear down branches at a much faster pace. With ubiquitous coverage, network throughput in the gigabit range, and ultra-low latency, cellular connectivity now has the power to become the primary connection for corporate data centers, as well as branch offices, store branches, and other corporate sites. To discuss the issue, I'm very pleased to be joined by Ken Bednasz, VP of Application Engineering at Telit Americas, and Jason Dorough, who is the Vice President of Sales at Accelerated, a Digi company. I'll be handing over to Jason in just a second, but before we go, I wanted to get started by asking a quick poll and get an idea of the current view on cellular enterprise networks. Now, those watching live should be able to see it pop up on their screen now with a question on, and for those who can't see it, it is, what kind of cellular capability are you considering for your branch or enterprise networks? Are you not considering cellular capabilities at all? Just started investigating cellular, using cellular and looking to upgrade, or waiting for 5G? I'd be very grateful if you could answer that. If you can see, we'll go over the results when they come through. In the meantime, a little bit of housekeeping from me just before I hand over. We do have some time put aside at the end for a Q&A session. So if anyone does have any questions, you should be able to see a box on your screen where you can type in the question, and we'll get the guys to answer them at the end. We'll get through as many questions as possible, but if we don't get to them all, they will Telit will get back to you at a later date with the answers. So anything at all during the presentation, just type in there and we'll get to them at the end. Also, any technical issues, then if you also put that in the box, our technical team will get on there. Right, and we've already got the results of the survey. Thank you very much, that was very quick. 40% said that they will wait for 5G. 40% also said they were planning to use cellular and looking to upgrade, and 20% said they were not considering cellular capabilities at all. And with that, I'll hand over to Jason.
Thank you so much, Chris. And I guess I'll start off by saying, unfortunately, I do not have a cool accent, so hopefully you guys will be patient and work with me as I kind of work through some of our thoughts and opinions when it comes to cellular networking in general. Also, it seems like from the poll question, we do have a kind of an interesting mix of folks in terms of cellular strategy, if you will. So what I thought it would be important to kind of discuss a little bit up front is where we see, that being Digi, where we see the LTE space from both a benefit as well as how customers are currently leveraging LTE today. So one of the things that we think is very important with cellular from a customer perspective is convenience, right? So cellular is one of the most convenient technologies when it comes to coverage and turn up of their sites. So we're seeing lots of customers really focus on the convenience aspects of LTE to provide a real value and a benefit to their business. The other thing that we're seeing is business continuity as probably the number one use case still for customers, is the ability to leverage cellular or LTE type connectivity when their primary wire link is failed. It is also extremely complementary from a wireline standpoint, because we find that the wireline connections will typically fail at different times than the wireless connection. In fact, it is the perfect complement, because if you think about it, the wireless connection literally bypasses the same conduit that fiber-seeking backhoe might go and attack. So a customer sometimes, when they're installing multiple wireline connections, they'll find that they're susceptible to outages just because of the physical nature of those wired connections, especially going through the same conduit into the same facilities. The other thing that we find is, even though sometimes it's more of a con versus a pro, is the cost-effective pricing when it comes to LTE. A lot of times you can pay for plans as needed, so it becomes more flexible in the billing arrangement. But then I think the other critical component from an LTE standpoint is reliability. So customers want prevalent coverage and scalable throughput when it comes to their connectivity options. Now, the other thing that I'd like to just kind of hit upon is just a quick discussion on what we see as the current trends, or the current, we call them use cases, that customers are using. And you'll notice that we've kind of separated this into kind of two different categories. We have those categories that are considered more of a failover, meaning my primary link or my primary connection to the network, if you will, is impaired some way, shape, or form. And in order to maintain business operations, business function, I'm able to leverage a cellular option as a backup to that. And then we also have kind of a list of what we kind of refer to as primary or non-failover type use cases, where we're seeing customers really take advantage of cellular technologies. And if you look at the failover use cases, you're going to see a lot of critical components, because that, just by its very nature, needing that access is very important. So if you're dealing with the retail space, point of sale is absolutely critical to keep going. If you think about the current state of our economy, with credit cards being the primary source of transactions, they now have those embedded chips that need that real-time connectivity, if you will, to do the validation on that card. And then if you look down here, the critical infrastructure, things like business critical applications, inventory, or anything else that the customer might need to transact and operate in their business is extremely critical. So these are the things that we refer to typically as the failover use cases. In today's world, the majority of customers we're seeing, they're perfectly satisfied with LTE. They're happy with it because they know it is a backup. So when they're going over into backup mode, they understand that the connection might be impaired. But I am telling you from firsthand experience that we're starting to see that absolutely change in the industry, and we'll get into that a little bit, to the point of we actually see some customers will actually start celebrating when they go into backup mode. So if you think about a customer that might have a broadband circuit, especially if it's a technology like DSL, the cellular speeds are absolutely crushing the performance of some of these wireline and broadband type circuits. So the change or the trend that we're seeing is that cellular not only is comparable to wireline, but is actually becoming more viable than wireline in certain conditions. Now, if you look over some of these non-failover use cases, we're not going to spend a lot of time talking about that. But if you think about, for example, a customer is ordered a fiber connection, they're waiting their couple of months or whatever it's going to be to get that thing installed. Customers can turn up operations literally instantly by turning up a cellular connection and leveraging that until that fiber connection comes in place. And then typically they're converting then that cellular connection over to a backup. If you think about things like kiosks or store within a store, digital signage, pop-up retail locations, even construction sites, meaning the trailers coming in for construction, and they need some type of access. Those are all important, what we call kind of primary use cases in a non-failover type environment that customers are happily using today. So the next thing I'd like to talk about is a little bit about both the challenges as well as what we're seeing as future trends that's really kind of backing up the overall focus in the industry of moving more towards a wireless world. One of the challenges that we still have, but it is trending in a more of a positive way, is metered data plans. So if you think about a customer that's used to purchasing some type of wireline circuit, broadband circuit, and something to that effect, they are happily, consuming as much data as they can potentially consume. Now, there's been talk in the past about, potentially throttling even wireline type services. However, that is not the overall trend in the industry. So customers are typically trained to think, if I've got a broadband or a wireline type connection, I have the ability to really kind of leverage the full extent of that port. In the cellular space, the metering effect is limited in my mind. A lot of the opportunities for customers to really take that step to move to an all cellular or truly cellular only type environment. However, some of the carriers, even some of the large carriers in the U.S. Specifically, and we're seeing this trend worldwide, are starting to really offer targeted business plans to the point of even offering unlimited type plans, not just grandfathered plans, but new plans that are becoming available to customers that are targeting business applications and needs. Now, there's always going to be a little bit of fine print associated with these plans, at least as they're being released today. Things like, hey, you're not supposed to be streaming video across these connections, but they're giving you the option to purchase, from a cellular standpoint, a sustained speed type thing. So we're really seeing that as a positive trend. The other thing that we've seen is kind of, I'll call them prior challenges, is performance, right? So you've got latency, you've got throughput, and then you've got the overall reception to the cellular network. And generally, cellular has always been a best effort type service, so you don't have that guarantee. And sometimes that can become a challenge for customers that are grew up in the wireline space where they had a private circuit and they expected that circuit to perform at what they purchased it at. So that has been potential challenge in the past, but again, as I mentioned early on, we are starting to see customers that flip over into failover mode and literally celebrate because their performance has dramatically improved. So we are also seeing the future from a 5G standpoint. Promises of super low latency, sub 10 milliseconds. If you think about this even 2 or 3 years ago, you probably couldn't even imagine that. But that is something that literally is coming. The improved speeds, up to gigabit type speeds, are literally available to customers today in small markets and capacities. But it's something that is really going to come in full force in the marketplace. So we're really going to have a real high degree of options when it comes to high speeds when it comes to cellular. Additionally, some of the challenges have been reliability, especially due to building signal penetration, if you will. And we'll talk a little bit about that because we think we kind of have that one whipped in a pretty good way. But we're overall seeing, increased coverage options, immediate availability. This is not a topic for this meeting, but Category M IoT type applications, right? They have the ability to penetrate now, much further within, kind of buildings as well as even potentially going underground. Now, let me talk about my last point about challenges here, and that's I put it down as perceived fear. And I think that what we sometimes see is customers are just a little bit timid, a little bit afraid to take that jump and to committing their network to run primary over cellular. Now, sometimes customers' hands get tied, meaning they might have a location where their only option is cellular from a connectivity standpoint, and they reluctantly leverage that. However, there is a real perceived fear that we see in the marketplace for some customers to make that jump. So what I will counter that with is that we are starting to see those folks that are willing to take some chances, if you will, and willing to kind of leverage the conveniences a lot of times of cellular in lieu of the overall promised performance. They're taking the jump, moving into a cellular primary world, and we're seeing proven deployments of customers. So we believe that the future of LTE as it relates to the fixed enterprise wireless environment is absolutely bright, and we're very excited where the industry is going. So that being said, I want to talk a little bit about one of the strategies that we adopted. We use it at Digi as well as some of the other vendors are starting to adopt this strategy. But our concept is that we want to separate the cellular connectivity from the actual router, device, appliance, firewall, whatever you might want to say. And that way customers can leverage the cellular technology that they need or desire and then couple that with whatever equipment that they want to use at the site. So we've designed this device where we'll take, for example, a Telit module. We'll put that Telit module inside of this finished product. So this is an enclosure and a product that Digi has designed and built. And then we will leverage that as a certified device to then be applied or used within another router or firewall device. So what that really provides to the customer is the ability to really leverage the technology they want in terms of cellular with the router or firewall of their choice. It also allows them to have the flexibility of upgrading down the road if a customer wants to take advantage of a new standard or speed that's available. The other nice thing about this platform is we've designed it specifically with dual SIM slots. And the benefit there to the customer is they can leverage, potentially multiple carriers. So we can actually do failover, logic with this particular device. And we could also drive solutions where a customer might, for example, roll a truck out to do a site survey with 2 different carriers. And then whichever carrier performs the best, then they leverage that carrier, or they'll leave both carriers in place and use them in a failover type environment. So let me move on to a slide that kind of talks to how we at Digi have decided to adopt a strategy to really improve the performance in the enterprise. So what you'll see here is a little diagram that's showing kind of a standard floor plan, if you will. You can think of this as maybe like a storefront, a retail storefront with back offices, or even you think of a bank or anything like that. You can imagine that in the back of the equipment room, or most of the equipment is probably the worst place possible to do cellular. And what the message I'll a lot of times give to our customers is even the average user of a cell phone will realize that the best option to improve their cellular coverage if they're having a bad cell phone call is probably not to run into their data center. But historically, we, as IT folks, typically want to put our equipment inside of a very secure, hardened portion of the building. And RF, or meaning the radio frequency, as well as those hardened environments associated with that room, really don't mix well. So our concept is extremely simple. We actually will package with some of our routers the ability to do a site survey. We'll actually give the customer a little battery pack. They will walk outside their building with that battery pack with the unit powered on to take a signal strength reading, and we show the signal strength right on the front of the unit. Then they can walk right into their data center and then take a reading there. And you can literally see, 3 or 4 bars of difference. I might get 2 bars in the data center, walk outside, I get 5 bars. So the concept is the customer can then take this device, mount it wherever the signal strength is best, and then simply leverage the mounting options. We have 5 different mounting options, everything from Velcro to put it on the window to zip ties to clips to put on drop ceiling, right? They mount the device, they capture the radio frequency or the radio signal at the source, convert that to an IP connection, and then send that back into the equipment room through a single Ethernet cable, because we're leveraging power over Ethernet as part of this package. So this is something that we find is a very beneficial thing to enable cellular connectivity, make the experience more positive to customers, and overcome that one of the major performance issues. I do have an example of a client that's leveraged kind of both scenarios. They put cellular in their data center and then cellular on the on one of our PoE routers, and I'll talk about that when I get to that particular slide. I also want to talk one other thing about items that we believe are critical to success: cloud management. And when I say cloud management, I'm talking about basic reporting and monitoring, as well as configuration ability to push out firmware updates. The world of cellular is moving at a rapid pace. And customers really need the ability to really monitor exactly what's going on with their cellular connections, as well as pushing out configuration updates and firmware. We find this is absolutely critical, and that's why we're big believers in customers leveraging some type of solution when it comes to the cellular side that has cloud-based monitoring, management, firmware updates, and centralized configuration that they can do all at one time. So that being said, I wanted to talk a little bit about the other thing that we find is a big value to some of our PoE type routers, meaning the routers that we can remotely mount. We want to empower customers to leverage whatever technology they have adopted or plan to adopt. And what I mean by that is that we don't want to be competitive with our friends at some of these other organizations and companies. In fact, what we simply ask for is we ask for an open Ethernet port, an open WAN port, and then we simply plug our device right into that WAN port, and then that device can then do the heavy lifting for all the security for both the wireline as well as the cellular connectivity. And they're using an optimized cellular connection. By improving the performance at the cellular level, you will have a dramatic improvement in the overall performance to the enterprise. And the other thing that we find is the average American business will leverage or maintain whatever infrastructure they're using, whether it's kind of a router or firewall, next generation firewall. They typically leave those in place for up to 5 years. As we all know, as soon as you walk out of the cell phone store with your cell phone that you're all happy about, you get all sad because you're suddenly out of date within a few months. So the concept is here we're disconnecting or moving the cellular into its own purpose-built appliance, providing an optimized cellular handoff, so you don't need to worry about any kind of antenna, cabling or any kind of antenna work that also degrades the signal because you're running over coax cabling. And then we just simply hand off that cellular connectivity as an IP session back into whatever router the customer has chosen to do. And you can see we've got a number of vendors that we've got specific instructions on how to configure not only our device, because our device is pretty much plug and play, IP pass-through type configurations, but we give you information on how to configure your Cisco, your Fortinet, your Juniper, your SonicWall, whatever application or device that you so choose to deploy. Now, I'd like to talk a little bit about one of our key success stories, and this is a platform that we have designed, built specific to AT&T's instructions. This is the 9th generation of this platform. In fact, this platform is called SD-WAN Static as the service name. So AT&T is a large carrier, obviously, is extremely focused on SD-WAN type services. And the reason SD-WAN is so important to them, as well as many of the other telcos, is it provides customers the ability to leverage not only their private circuits, but then also incorporate low-cost, high-speed broadband or internet-type circuits into a total solution. So the way this device operates, it's literally got 10 Ethernet ports in the back, eight defined as LAN, with a couple supporting power over Ethernet, as well as a couple of WAN ports. And AT&T provides this service and allows the customer to, quote-unquote, bring their own broadband, or BYOB, or bring their own network. So simply, they will then, that being the customer, will leverage either a SIM card of their choice. And believe it or not, that AT&T is, in the interest of being open and supportive to their clients, provides a Telit modem as part of this. In fact, it's in our form factor of our CM plug-in modem that customers can leverage for any carrier that they so choose. Now, it's preloaded with an AT&T SIM. Obviously, the recommendation is to use AT&T, but it will support, in their minds, the other quote-unquote bad guys or other carriers. But we build this, again, custom to AT&T to deliver their SD-WAN static service to customers to provide hybrid VPN use case, meaning customers can leverage MPLS connectivity at their core, and then roll out sites and that might be broadband only, or leverage sites that have both an MPLS circuit as well as a broadband connection, and this device will provide that back-end connectivity into the AT&T MPLS cloud. Other use cases that are included with this package are out-of-band management. Temporary bandwidth is another one that AT&T will leverage this for. And then the one thing that we're seeing as an absolute trend with this particular product is customers moving to a primary cellular solution. So that's going to lead me into a discussion briefly on another success story that we've had, and this was a partnership with AT&T. And this is a large retailer, and I've actually had a relationship with this retailer for many years. And it's one in which I was able to kind of see them go from more of a satellite type, preference because of the ubiquity or coverage of a satellite network to a broadband network and to now a 100% cellular network. So this is a large brand name retailer with well over 5,000 sites, and they have adopted a 100% cellular strategy from their enterprise networking standpoint. Now, the reason for this is quite simply is the flexibility, the convenience, as well as the cost, because the cost really works out for them. Those two things is what allowed this customer to go from dipping their toe into the water, using cellular only where they had no other coverage options, or using cellular to turn up a store as they were waiting for a wireline circuit to be in, to now moving to a 100% cellular network. So their strategy is they're using that AT&T SD-WAN appliance. They actually put that into the equipment room or the manager's office and the actual stores, right? And then they'll use one of our PoE routers, and they will have an installer go out there and run an extensive site survey to find where the location is best to install the device. They will install the AT&T SIM inside of our PoE-enabled router, and they will put the Verizon SIM inside of that AT&T SD-WAN appliance. And what we are seeing from an improvement standpoint, the speed tests are almost 2-to-1 in terms of performance with that PoE-enabled router. The PoE-enabled router obviously provides a lower cost solution to the customer, lets them leverage the technology they want, and it optimizes. And again, I can't stress that enough. It optimizes the performance of the cellular network and makes that thing easy to install. But what they're doing with it is they're typically trying to put that store as primary AT&T and then back up to Verizon. So that if AT&T ever has an outage or a hiccup, it will automatically switch over to the Verizon connection. And then at some locations, just due to coverage constraints, and when you're rolling out thousands of sites, you will find some sites that will work significantly better, if you will, on one carrier over another. So if we have one of those locations during the install on the site survey, they will mark that store as primary Verizon and then fail over to AT&T. What they're doing as an overall cost standpoint is they're putting a smaller end pooling plan under Verizon and a larger pooling plan under AT&T, and their cost for this entire network with two, and I'll call them circuits, but they're really cellular connections, right? They're circuits in the sky. They are leveraging a 100% cellular network down to the point where they're eliminating even a POTS line, all the POTS lines out of these stores. So they're cutting out their POTS lines, and then they're leveraging a terminal adapter running voice over IP off of the same data network. So this is a perfect example of one of these customers that I mentioned in the front part of this discussion that has made the step. They have made the move from going from hey, I'm just going to use cellular in a backup environment, very, very focused and specific use case, to moving out to a 100% cellular network. They are also extremely excited about the new technologies coming down the road, and by leveraging our devices at these stores, they will have the ability to upgrade these devices from a cellular technology without having to replace all of the equipment. So that is just another bonus that this customer has found. So this is one that we're very excited about because they're number one, demonstrating that not only is it possible, but it becomes very beneficial. One thing I don't know if I mentioned this, but when I talk to this customer, they will refer to themselves as a real estate company. And you might think, why? I mean, they move tons and tons of product, right? That's what they do. At least that's what you think they do from the outside. But they tell me that their number one asset is location, the location of that store. So if they roll out a store and they're on one corner and then catty corner, they think that they're going to get more traction, more feet coming in, more boots, if you will, coming into that store. They will absolutely move that store to leverage and maintain more operations or better operations in terms of sales. So location is extremely important to them, and that is one of the primary reasons they initially considered a 100% cellular network, because even just a few years ago, this was a customer that was very apprehensive when it came to cellular, and just because of the needs of their business to be flexible, they started leveraging cellular more and more to the point where they became so comfortable with it that they're just literally getting rid of all wireline circuits. So with that, I wanted to go on to another discussion. This is another retailer, right, because retailers are typically under lots of pressures when it comes to both price, availability, as well as coverage. So we do find a pretty sizable portion of the market in the cellular space being in the retail side. The same is true of other use cases like fleet and other things like that. But when it comes to enterprise networking, we are really seeing the retail space kind of take the lead in this market because by the nature of their business, they're almost forced to do this. So let me talk about this one. This one is a more of a high-volume convenience store customer, well over 4,000 sites in both the U.S. and Canada. They were leveraging a T1 private line network, and they are making the move to a full SD-WAN appliance. So they're going full out. They're getting an SD-WAN appliance. It's got the x86 supporting multiple VNFs, and they have absolutely adopted the mindset of going down to what I'll call more of the traditional SD-WAN concept. And what they are requiring, though, is that as part of this initiative, they need and require backup connectivity. So what they are doing is they are leveraging a broadband circuit where available, and then they are also then using cellular. So they're doing more of the primary and backup. Now, the reason I wanted to bring this one up is because they have literally just started putting their toe out instead of dealing with situations where customers are trying to leverage a private line where there's not broadband available, because that is still kind of a problem or a trend issue in our space. They are going to start moving to a cellular network just because of the comfort level they now have with their cellular backup network. So they do have a number of sites where they're planning on doing a 100% cellular type solution, just like the customer we just mentioned. But the net effect here, folks, is that we've got customers that are starting to leverage and see the real value and power from an LTE standpoint, doing some type of application sharing. In this particular customer, they're absolutely not just leaving that as a dormant connection. They're leveraging some applications over the LTE as primary and then back up to the wireline. But they're also, again, as mentioned, moving to an environment or a store configuration where they can support or will support LTE. And again, they're taking the model of using two different carriers to provide that extra layer of redundancy. So with that, I just wanted to give just a quick, not to belabor this, just talk a little bit about some of our enterprise our routers and our lineup. This is the lineup of routers that we typically do. These are a couple of our routers that will support PoE. This is more of a traditional enterprise type router that's more of an all-in-one type solution. And again, all of these routers and our enterprise lineup, if you will, leverage that plug-in modem. And as mentioned, two of the three here have that ability to be remotely mounted to capture better signal. So with that, I think I was supposed to turn over at the half past the hour to Ken.
Thank you, Jason. I'm going to jump ahead to slide 14 here, so hopefully everybody will be able to see slide 14 once it loads. My name is Ken Bednasz. I'm the Vice President of Application Engineering at Telit for the Americas region. Telit is a leading enabler of wireless modules. So we provide cellular modules, Wi-Fi, Bluetooth, short range, GPS modules. And what I'm going to focus on today is around our cellular lineup and how we help enable enterprise routers like Digi and Jason just spoke about. Okay, jumping ahead to slide 15. Okay, so why cellular for enterprise? Jason did a great job explaining the evolution of cellular. You know, we started off many 10, 15, 20 years ago with 1G technology that evolved to 2G technology to 3G to 4G. And the initial technologies were very focused around voice communications. There wasn't a lot of provisions in there for data communications, low latency, high bandwidth, and that has definitely changed over the last 5 years. With regards to what cellular is doing different, how it's evolving, well, we have more RF channels that are now available for cellular, which is leading to increased bandwidth, which leads to increased data speeds and higher capacity. And that's really huge for what we're talking about in this enterprise segment. We've done, the technology has evolved for higher orders of modulation, which makes the technology more efficient and leads to higher data speeds and more antenna support. And with more antenna support, we get better coverage and better performance and more spectrum, which is really important, as we'll talk about this in the next few minutes. So what's more important, what's very important about the more additional RF channels is downlink and uplink CA, which is carrier aggregation. We are now able to aggregate multiple carriers of different frequencies. So as the cellular spectrum is fragmented, we can now pull bandwidth from multiple different frequencies at the same time and pool them together. So we create multiple highways to send that data, which creates a huge redundancy and higher bandwidth and higher capacities. And this is a big evolution that happened a few years ago with cellular, which is making 4G LTE more mainstream. The other big advance is more antennas. In the past, we talked a lot about single input, single output antennas with 2G and 3G. Now with 4G LTE, we have MIMO, which is multiple input, multiple output antennas, which leads to better coverage and better performance. And as we move forward to 5G, we're talking about massive antenna arrays, so more than 4 inputs and 4 outputs, which is leading to even higher performance as we talk about 5G getting to 20 gigabits per second download speeds. As we get into more spectrum, the governments around the world have done an excellent job supporting cellular technologies. They've been allocating more and more spectrum, which is really important for what we're trying to do. In the past, we talked about 1G, 2G, 3G technologies just supporting a couple bands in each region. So you talked about 850 megahertz and 1900 megahertz in North America. You got over to Europe, you talked about 900 and 1800 megahertz. That has drastically changed today. We see new allocations of spectrum both on the low end, in the 600 megahertz and 700 megahertz range with bands 14 and band 71 in North America, which is leading to further better in-building penetration for cellular, which is really key for indoor locations, as Jason talked about. Then we're also seeing the addition of spectrum on the high end with the CBRS and LAA bands at 3.5 gigahertz and 5 gigahertz, which is leading to higher bandwidths, wider frequency spectrum. So we've had huge support within the industry to make sure that the technology is maturing, and in addition of the frequency spectrum bands is really helping. So what's different now with cellular compared to the past? It's really the higher data speeds and lower latency, which is making cellular ready for enterprise grade, not only as backup but also as primary, as Jason explained earlier. The ecosystem also for cellular is very huge, so it's much more mature nowadays. There's over 500 LTE networks available around the world, so it's really maturing compared to what we talked about 10 years ago. I'm going to jump ahead to slide 16 now. So the evolution of 4G LTE. So when people talk about 4G LTE, a lot of people are used to the commercials that we've seen in 2010. In 2010, there was the initial launch of LTE. We talked about LTE Category 3 and Category 4, which is around 100 megabits per second download speeds. Well, now as we jump forward 8 years from then, LTE is drastically advanced. It's went through a couple different steps from just plain old LTE to LTE Advanced to now LTE Advanced Pro. So we're now talking about 5x carrier aggregation, so we can aggregate 5 different channels and 5 different spectrums to create Gigabit LTE. So today we're deploying products that support LTE Category 8 and support download speeds of 1.2 gigabits per second. So as we move forward in time, we're going to jump ahead to 5G. 5G is going to support up to 20 gigabits per second download speeds and 1 gigabit upload speed. So we're making massive and fast evolution of LTE. So not all LTE is created the same. So what we had back in 2010 and 2012 and 2014 was a great start, but where we are today is drastically different. The other good thing about LTE is, the ecosystem. I mentioned over 500 networks, and it is kind of the main sole technology that's used for cellular around the world now, which is much different than we were, 5-10 years ago when there was competing technologies for 4G. Some of you may remember the IEEE WiMAX or 3GPP2 with CDMA. Those have kind of fell away because they never had the ecosystem that was needed, and 3GPP with LTE and now moving to 5G is definitely the leader. I'm going to jump ahead to slide 17 now. So enterprise networking, reliability is really key. When we talk about enterprise, and Jason did a great job explaining all the different use cases and why reliability and redundancy is so important, especially for the SD-WAN enterprise. And in this slide, we just show how these networks are comprised. And there's a lot of different pieces to the puzzle, right? You can have the stores, to the regional offices, to the headquarters, to warehouses, and they all need to be connected with the enterprise network. So how does cellular fit in? Well, cellular has outpaced the fixed wireline. So cellular is offering a different value proposition that the fixed wireline cannot do today. One is redundancy, and second is reliability. When we talk about redundancy, a lot of times into these buildings there's a single fiber line. If that fiber line goes down, then you're out of network. You have no connectivity. With cellular, it's different. There's redundancy on 2 different levels. First, there's redundancy with multiple cell towers. Typically, when you're in any location, you can talk to multiple cell towers. So if a single cell tower went down, you have another secondary backup, which would be the secondary or third cell tower that you typically can see and can talk to. And secondly, you can support multiple network operators. Jason talked about how a lot of them have not only single operator support, but multiple operator support. So we have products at Telit that can support, for example, for the U.S. in a single product, all 4 national operators. So you can support AT&T, Verizon, T-Mobile, and Sprint in a single product. The other is reliability. So, I live in North Carolina in the U.S. on the East Coast, and we just faced 2 hurricanes. We had Hurricane Florence and Michael that came through. Now, we were not near the coast, but there were still significant power outages and internet and cable outages in our region. And so, with the power outages, people were running generators to get their power back, but there was nothing they could do to get the cable back and get the internet back that was run over fiber or DSL. The only option for connectivity to continue running your business, even working, was really with a cellular hotspot or an enterprise-grade router. So once again, cellular really shined when there was a natural disaster coming through. The cellular network remained up, remained stable, and it was a sole source of communication for many different locations that have been out of internet service for over a week. Okay, I'm going to jump ahead to slide 18. So Telit, we offer a variety of cellular modules. We offer everything from low category products to high category products. If you look at LTE Category 1 products, for example, they support 10 megabits per second download and 5 megabits per second upload, all the way up to Cat 18 products, which are 30 to 50 times faster, offering gigabit LTE speeds download and 150 megabits per second upload speeds. So we offer a range of cellular modules. All of our cellular modules are pre-approved, and so what that means is we design and certify them with the different regulatory agencies around the world. So, if we talk about US or Canada, it's FCC, IC. European Union is RED. When it comes to the industry approvals, we complete PTCRB, GCF, and then we work with the network operators around the world to complete approvals in all the different regions in EMEA, APAC, and in the Americas. And so our philosophy is to offer global products for data cards with multiple carrier support, and we're also recently added public safety support. So 3GPP has added a public safety option into the standard, and we are now supporting that with some of our new products that we're launching. I'm going to jump forward to slide 19. I'm going to highlight two products quickly. The first product I want to highlight is our LM940. It's a Cat 11 mini PCIe data card. So this is the type of product that is going into many enterprise routers that you're buying today or using today. It's a global product, so it supports all the key frequency bands for global deployment. It comes with all the major network operator approvals, the AT&T, Verizon, Sprint, Rogers, Telstra, Vodafone, Orange, NTT, Docomo, and on. It supports 600 megabits per second download speeds and 75 megabits per second upload speeds. And it supports all the key connections and connectivity. So we have cloud connections, so you can connect all your cloud interfaces. We have device management, and we have firmware over there updating, which is really important. And so as we talk about SD-WAN, there's many different aspects of SD-WAN. At the simplest form, what this product can do is this product can do carrier switching. So we can enable and disable different frequency bands and different support mechanisms for different carriers around the world by software defining our radio to support an AT&T network, support a global network, support a Verizon network, whatever it may be. On slide 20, I'm going to highlight our second product, which is our LM960. This is a new product that we launched this year in North America and globally. This is our Gigabit LTE product, so this is a Cat 18 data card that supports 1.2 gigabits per second download speed and 150 megabits per second upload speed. This is the first product in the market that supports 2x carrier aggregation for the uplink speed. So traditionally, you've seen a lot of focus around download speeds. As the technology evolves more for the enterprise, you're going to see the download and upload speeds become a little bit more symmetrical as the technology evolves with 3GPP. The key advantages of this product is really support for new bands. We talked about how new bands are being added with LAA, CBRS, band 48, and also on the low end with band 14, 700 megahertz, and band 71 and 600 megahertz. So the advantage of this product over the previous product is the additional bands, along with the increase in data speed in both the downlink and uplink. I'm going to jump ahead to slide 22. Slide 22 is going to talk about, why are we leveraging cellular? How do we leverage cellular with enterprise networking? It's really about reliability and redundancy. Cellular is now, since it's outpaced the wireline, is now offering a better value proposition in certain use cases. In a lot of the challenges that we've seen in the past, people remember 2G or 3G have been eliminated. Latencies have greatly reduced. Reliability has increased. The 3GPP evolution from LTE to LTE Advanced, LTE Pro to 5G is well on its way, and the ecosystem is huge. So you don't have to design multiple products to do different deployments around the world. So if you have a global company, you don't have to worry about having 4 or 5 different solutions, having 4 or 5 different fiber providers. You can do it all with a single cellular network operator. These cellular network operators now have global rate plans, so you can have one network operator, and provide products around the world. I think for everybody, it's going back and taking a look at what you're doing for your new architecture. Rethink or reinvestigate. Challenge the same old solution that you've been used to having. Especially if you're having any downtime. If your fiber lines or DSL lines are not working all the time, that's a big issue. That can be eliminated with cellular. So definitely consider cellular. I talked the example about the hurricane that happened, and that's just something that I lived through the last couple of months that really shown how cellular can shine for specific use cases. Having cellular running your business can keep your business up and running. And I think, the future is bright with 5G. 5G is really just going to increase what we have now. 5G is a build-on from LTE Advanced Pro, which we're using today with our LM960 product and helping enable these enterprise routers from Digi and other partners. So that's all I have today. So I think we're going to open it up for some questions.
Sure. If anyone has got any questions, we've got a few in already, then just type it in the box, and we'll get to as many as we can now, but the guys can answer any on email afterwards. So if you've got anything, even if it's right at the end, just put it in the box you can see on your screen, and we'll get to them. So I guess better get started. Get me out of the way. The first one is, what do you think will happen with cellular for enterprise networking when we start seeing 5G new radio rollouts? Will we be looking at Gigabit LTE for multimode with 5G NR or single mode NR modules only?
Yeah, this is Ken. I can take that question. That's a great question. I think it's going to definitely depend on the use case. So I think when we move to 5G with handsets and cell phones, it's going to be multimode. It's going to be multimode because 4G and Gigabit LTE is still going to provide the coverage indoors and for other locations where 5G will not initially touch. As we talk about some of these enterprise solutions, they may be able to deploy a 5G only solution because they may be more line of sight or more locations that do support 5G from the get-go. So I think it's definitely going to be a blend. I think the initial rollouts will be a lot of multimode, but I think as we get into 2021, 2022, we will shift and see some 5G only solutions.
Okay, great. Next one is, what is the maximum speed possible per enterprise customer? I don't know who wants to take that.
Ken, you want to take that, or you want me to take that?
Let's both take this one. I'll start off by saying, we have theoretical speeds with our LM960 of 1.2 gigabits per second, but in the real world, we're seeing 500, 600, about half the theoretical speeds. We're seeing 500 megabits per second real world sustained in certain use cases. So that's what we're seeing from our testing standpoint.
And I would agree with that. The one thing that we also see is that you do see differences based on the customer's geography. So since we are connecting commercial towers, you might see ebbs and flows where, you see a higher speeds off of one tower and then not so high off another.
Great. One for Jason now. Does Digi offer the plug-in modem for use in non-Digi hardware routers?
That's actually an excellent question. The design that we currently have is kind of a proprietary connector. So we have worked with some customers in the past to provide them with details about how they could leverage that device in a third-party router, and what we see as a good use case for that is customers that are putting in kind of higher-end network equipment, higher-end routers, where most of their customers might not want to leverage cellular. It doesn't make sense for that vendor to build the device with a radio built in all the time. So having that upgradability or that modularity becomes very important. We have, and I can mention this because we have done a press release on this, but we've done work with Juniper specifically, and we designed a specific module that slides into their SRX series routers. So not only do we sell commercially, we also do a lot of OEM work. So we've designed a specific module that works just into the Juniper SRX series routers, but we do have a couple of customers looking at our current design of our CM plug-in modem, and they are looking to leverage that into an existing application. So the answer is yes, it can be done, but it's something that would need to be kind of worked and thoughtfully designed into the product in advance.
Sure. Another product-related question, this time for Ken. What was the motivation for selecting MPCIe instead of M2 for most of your products?
Yes. At Telit, we do support both for the data card. So within the data card world, there's two different product specifications or form factors. One is the mini PCIe card, which I highlighted. Our two products today, our LM940 and LM960, are part of the mini PCIe family. And there's another form factor, the NGFF or M.2 form factor, which we do have products too. We have an LN940, which I kind of skipped over today. So we do support both of them, but we are more focused on the mini PCIe for a couple reasons. It's a little bit more common form factor in the enterprise and the router space. And secondly, we believe it's more scalable. Even though it's a legacy form factor and a little bit larger, it's a little bit more scalable as we get to the Gigabit LTE and especially 5G, because it's a little bit larger in size. So we believe that we can do, the 5G designs on a mini PCIe card, where the M.2 form factor that's designated for wireless WAN, which is a 30 by 42 slot B card, is not going to be large enough. And so what's going to happen with the M.2 form factor is there's a variety of form factors, about 20 different form factors out there. So it's not so common. It's not just one form factor. And as we get into 5G, they're going to have to select a different version of the M.2 card in order to support 5G.
Great. We have got some more questions lined up, but if anyone listening would like to ask one, then feel free to just type it in the box and we'll try and get to it. Any we don't get to, we can answer by email afterwards. The next one, I think, is it's addressed to Jason, actually, but maybe you can both sort of pitch in with this. What is the best way to help a customer feel comfortable using cellular data as a primary form of connectivity?
I'll take that one, and that one is definitely a difficult task, depending on the audience that you're talking to. So a lot of the customers that I work with, they've been in IT for many years. They're just very, very comfortable with buying their circuits and getting their committed information rates. So what I have found is that the best opportunity is to find specific use cases where the customer really has, it becomes a no-brainer to use cellular. And then the other thing that we try to do as much as possible is get the customers actually testing and piloting out. And a lot of times their eyes get opened and they're actually a little surprised at the type of performance that they can see and gain from a cellular connection standpoint. So I guess it's kind of two things that we do. We're typically trying to find use cases that match what cellular's currently looked at and reflected at is really the preferred and really the no-brainer way of doing things. And then number two is to find opportunities to customers to actually start testing and piloting out some of these products in actual, I'll call it enterprise environments. And that is what gives them the comfort to really move forward with cellular, as actually after they've seen their own applications, their own business processes work with cellular.
Okay, one for Ken now. Why are uplink speeds so low compared to downlink speeds in cellular?
Yes, there definitely are unbalanced today, and that is a lot around the use cases. So traditionally in cellular, there was focus around downloading data to the device, whether it was a handset, whether it was a display, whether it's for video streaming, and there was less requirements for uploads. That is now changing, and so the beautiful thing about 3GPP, it's a huge working group, and they adopt the technology to the needs of today and tomorrow. And so we do see a big focus moving forward on increasing the upload data speeds. And that was the first major step was happened with the Cat 13 upload speeds that are supported on our LM960, which is 2x carrier aggregation. It's actually the first product that supports 2x carrier aggregation with two non-continuous bands. So we can take spectrum and transmit in two different bands, whether it's a low band at 850 megahertz and a high band at 1900 megahertz, or vice versa. And so as we move forward and move into 5G, you'll see that the upload speeds will continue to increase. Right now it's really based around some legacy requirements. But again, it's been 30x increase in upload speeds over the last 5 years from Cat 1 all the way up to Cat 13.
Okay, great. Thanks. We have got a few minutes left. If anyone does want to ask a very late question, then feel free to just put it in the box, which you can see on your screen. And if the guys don't get to it, they are happy to answer any over email at a later date. Product-related one now for Jason. Do Digi routers support T-Mobile's Band 71?
Great question. We do not currently support T-Mobile Band 71. We know that is a band that T-Mobile is actively pursuing and rolling out. We are evaluating a couple of the Telit modules right now, and the higher-end Telit modules that will support that Band 71. But I think the benefit here is that our concept of that modular modem, as soon as we have that support available, and as soon as these new technologies come out, because it's not just about the LTE categories anymore, it's also about these specialized bands. There's also Band 14 when it comes to the FirstNet type environment. And again, the beauty of our design with the modular modem is we can, leverage a new Telit modem when it becomes available, build it out in our product set, and then make it available, as a field upgradable type solution for our customers. So the answer is no, not today, but tomorrow, yes, with our friends at Telit.
The next one, why does AT&T call the U115 service SD-WAN static?
Okay, so that's an interesting question. So I think when it comes to SD-WAN, I think everybody's definition of SD-WAN is a little bit different. I think the number one value proposition to SD-WAN is really in the carrier space. There's a big desire for them to maintain and retain their private line services. So in my mind, SD-WAN a lot of times has some kind of relation of private line as well as, more ubiquitous internet type access, bringing those two things together. Now, the other thing that, some customers want or like to see is they like to see multiple software functions running into a router instead of purpose-built devices. Most of our devices, candidly, full exposure here, are purpose-built devices that do certain things. You need an x86 type platform, which is really like your PC, running what's called VNFs or virtual network functions. And the SD-WAN static service that we deliver with AT&T is an ARM-based system that has an AT&T basically VNF built in, and it doesn't support third-party VNFs. And the other thing that I think that they call it static for number one, that reason, then number two, is that a lot of times, SD-WAN, at least the dream of SD-WAN is to dynamically find which circuit is performing the best and leveraging that. Now, I personally see challenges with that. Sometimes things start working a little off because sometimes those algorithms aren't perfect. But the net effect with the SD-WAN static services, customers have the ability to define up front class of service settings and then how the device will respond, as opposed to making a dynamic decision. You statically define those decisions up front. So that is why they call it static. Sorry, that was a long-winded answer.
Thanks. Okay, so the next one, what's your view on enterprise PCs directly connecting to the network, e.g. small cells or enterprise networking offered directly by mobile operators?
Ken, do you want to take that one, or?
Yes. So the small cells, the microcells, femtocells, they're really there to increase capacity, increase coverage. And so, the products that we bring to market do support all those different solutions, whether they're portable towers, fixed towers, micro towers, whatever it may be. We support all those solutions that are being provided by the network operators.
So I guess the key to that, just from my perspective, is really providing more dense coverage, especially in kind of an urban environment or locations where the cellular coverage is just not quite there. So we do see that as being leveraged in the cellular space, but most of the time my customers are specifically just trying to capture the best signal they can, and a lot of times they'll switch to a different carrier as opposed to doing kind of a build-out, if you will, at their site, so for whatever it's worth.
Okay, the next one is regarding the uplink and downlink ratio, can we use 2-2 while the other operators continue to use 1-3?
Ken, do you want to take that one?
Yes. As far as the carrier aggregation in antennas, 2-2-1-3, I don't know exactly what specifics we want to get into, but as far as the data speeds, the multiple input, multiple output allows for 2x or 4x MIMO, so we are able to use multiple antennas for both uplink and downlink at the same time. And also with the carrier aggregation, we can do downlink and uplink carrier aggregation at the same time. So there's a tremendous amount of flexibility with our latest product, which is the LM960. So we are able to do either 5x down, 2x up, or any combination.
Excellent. On that note, I think we're out of time. So if anyone has any further questions, then send them over, and we'll get the guys to answer them. Thank you very much for listening, and thanks to the guys for a very interesting presentation.